All right, so we'll go ahead and get started, so we can get started on time. My name's Dr. Corwin. I work here with the Center of Excellence, and today we're happy to present Beth Smith. She's the East Tennessee Coordinator for STEP Incorporated, which is Tennessee's federally funded Parent Training and Information Center. She's here to talk to us. She joined STEP in September of 2014 and has served on the Tennessee Department of Education's advisory panel on dyslexia and has spoken at numerous events to educators and parents on topics concerning children with disabilities in education. Ms. Smith's experience as a parent advocate. She has a teenage daughter with Asperger's syndrome, which has allowed her to become a skilled, individualized education program facilitator who works with families to build collaborative relationships with school personnel. Additionally, she has a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of North Texas. Go Mean Green. And decades of leadership and team building experience. So she's going to talk to us, and we're really glad to have her here. I think this is a topic that I know myself and several other people have really wanted to get more information on, so we're really glad she's here. Just a couple of things. There are snacks out there, many of you guys know. There's also bathrooms at either end if you need them. And there's a sign-in sheet in the back. Please make sure you sign in, and there's a place on the sign-in sheet for you to give us your email address. And also, if you're interested in receiving a newsletter from STEP on things that they're doing and different information that they have available, just make sure to check next to where you signed in back there.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, as Caleb alluded to, I did go to North Texas. I'm a Texan. Born, raised, bred, and up in Tennessee due to work. But I made it around the U.S. for a little bit. Anyway, and the Mean Green thing came actually, the color's green, but Mean Joe Green actually went to the University of North Texas. Back then it was North Texas State. And I actually, to date myself, went to college with his son. So you think about when he played football and how old his son is, that tells you kind of how old I am. So he was in one of my classes. Yeah, we won't go there. So anyway, I got to work for STEP, just like I said, through my daughter. When she actually got diagnosed in 3rd grade because she started doing some OCD behaviors. She pulls hair when she gets stressed. And so as a parent of a girl, you kind of flip out, when that happens. And so I didn't know what it was. Knew she'd always been highly intelligent, especially with words. She loves words and reading and all that. And had always gotten in trouble at school. When you know the principal with no makeup and a ball cap, it's not a good thing ever when they're just like in kindergarten. So that's not good. And so she just, she got bored. I always say a bored Lee is a troubled Lee. Her name's Lee. So so we can't do that. So that's how I ended up with STEP. So I learned a lot of lessons initially from STEP about how to advocate. So I'd come back and say, hey, what do I do in this situation? Then I'd go back out. I'd send myself back out and do it for her. And so the director kept seeing what I was doing for her and the success, and she was like, you got to come work for us and all that. And at the time, it just wasn't right, because this is a thing where you decide, I'm going to do what I love, not for the money. So you have to be in that place of, in your life. And so I am, and it works great for her because she can volunteer at our offices, and she actually volunteers with an autism group through her occupational therapist. So she's a great example, of what you can. I get emotional talking about her. Anyway, so that's STEP a little bit. So we're going to talk about a brighter future for children with disabilities, who we are and what we do, and how you guys can work with us for information and how to disseminate information to parents and how we can help them. So this is us, and I was talking to Caleb earlier about why we're in Greenville, headquartered in Greenville, Tennessee, and that's kind of when the grants got funded through IDEA. It's actually Part D of IDEA. The parent who was advocating at the time, because they were tiny little grants, said, I'll take that grant because I'm doing all this stuff for free anyway. So they ended up in all these little quirky towns across the U.S. But we do have an office in Nashville and an office in Memphis, too. So we've kind of divided the state into 3 sections. We also have Hispanic outreach. So we have 3 Hispanic coordinators in each part of the state. And so there is a dedicated 800 number that Hispanics, Spanish speakers can actually call for assistance. So that's a good thing to know. So our funding is, we're almost all grant funded. So our big grant is actually called the PTI grants, Parent Training Information Center, through the Federal Office of Education. And so that's the big one, and that's where parents call us, and all our stuff is free. If they have their child has a disability, suspected disability, everything we do for them, materials, outreach, whatever, is free. So we also get other grants. So we do several grants with the State Department of Education. We have a really great working relationship with them. We speak at a lot of their events and participate with them on advisory councils, representing parents, kind of giving their voice, making sure there is a parent involvement piece in what they're doing, and just work with them on that type of stuff. So that's the FYI 2 and the big SPDG grant. So then we also do gifts, and we get corporate. Actually, I ended up here because I worked for Walmart. Walmart's got a lot of grants out there a lot of people don't know about, so I've gotten us several pretty good-sized grants for our website and different things. So that has been me bringing the donation jar to STEP, so it's been good. So what we do, this is a brief listing of what we do. We help birth through 26. And if there's something I got a call the other day from a person wanting assistance actually to train a food bank organization on some empathy regarding her children with disabilities. And that's not really something we do, but I know who does that. So I told her I hate to send you to somebody else, but I know who can help you. So I put her in contact with somebody. So we do that kind of thing. If it's not in our wheelhouse, we will direct them in the right place to call. So we do trainings across the state. If somebody comes to us, when I talked to Caleb about doing this, we do have this, but then what I'll do is take this workshop and I might merge it with another to try to build it to meet your needs. So we try to kind of tailor things too. So we have webinars, electronic information. It's like I said to everybody earlier, if you weren't in the pre-chat, we're on YouTube, so we have YouTube videos. If you're missing me, you want to hear this lovely voice, whatever, you can tune in and see me again. And we do one-on-one assistance. That is the majority of my time is spent on phone calls, emails, and all that with parents. So parents can send in an IEP, individualized education program for their child, because that's easier for me to look at it to help them, because they're not all the same page numbers. So I can't say, look at page 3. I can say, okay, kind of go to this, and after this, tell me what it says. So if they can get it to me, it's easier. And then they can tell me what it is they're trying to achieve for their child or what specific questions they have. And because we look at them so much, we're a really good resource. Plus, if it's something maybe I'm not as good at as our guy in Middle Tennessee, he's really great on some extra behavior stuff that he's dealt with, I might contact him and see what strategies he has used in the past to help families. So we use each other as resources. So we do help parents with IEP and 504 preparation, and that is from even, initial, I think my child, like I did, there's something going on with her. I'm not sure what it is. And, so what's the school's responsibility? Because honestly, she went through all this and got her diagnosis. I took it to the school principal who, like I said, he knew me very well. I was in his office a lot. And he says, well, that's great to know. And that's all he does with it. And I'm thinking, that just didn't feel right. That's it. There's got to be something more. And then I swear to you, a week later, Steph had a workshop in our Greenville office. It was meant to be. And I was like, I need to write him a letter. I need to put him on notice that I want to sign consent and have the school look at her for an autism diagnosis. And so had it not been for Steph, I might have not known it. But, man, I was Googling like crazy after we got the diagnosis to figure out what it was. So we do some attendance at IEP and 504 meetings. We are not grant funded to attend a whole lot of meetings because we are kind of few and far between. Some states do nothing. So every state has a PTI like us, at least one. Some states have several, a couple. But they write their grants differently. So it just depends. If I'm working with a family for a long time, and potentially maybe one of the parents has a disability of their own that's causing part of the struggle in what they want to get for their child. And we've worked, they've watched our videos, we've tried strategies. It's not, I will go to a meeting. But we won't facilitate. We're not an advocate. So what we'll do is sit down before the meeting, plan what we're going to talk about, and then I try to have the parent do it, and then I coach them through the process in the meeting. So I might interject something to ask a question to bring it back on track or whatever that might be to try to, work with the parent. I had a parent that used to get really upset in IMP meetings. I mean, sometimes it was really random. So she would just really get upset and it would throw the whole meeting off. So we'd start talking about excuse yourself, take breaks. And it took me going to a meeting and saying, do you think you need a break? And she's like, oh yeah, I do. So, and she did. So she realized it. So now I don't have to go because she knows when she feels the escalation to excuse herself, take a break, come back, and the meeting's still good. It's all okay, but it just took that first time. So we do some of that type of stuff. We do a lot of letter writing help because we tell parents do everything in writing, keep it all. If you, like I have a file on my email that's got her stuff in it. I have a great relationship with my daughter's school. It's been up and down. Obviously from the start it wasn't so great, and then it goes up and down. But I keep everything. I tell them it's not super organized. It's a big pile. It's like a tree. You could go through it and figure out how old she was, like the rungs of a tree. But it's there. And if I ever need it or have a question, I can always go back to it. Referral to other agencies, kind of like we talked about earlier. Information awareness events and conferences. So there was an Our Daily Bread, Tennessee, it's a food bank thing, Our Daily Bread conference, I think it was last weekend or weekend before, that I presented. It was in Knoxville. So we'll do conferences like that where there's a lot of providers, teachers, partners in education. We'll do that. And that's where, like this, our outreach, you guys will touch a lot of families and disperse our information better than just me. So that's what we try to do that. And so we also do conflict resolution assistance. So if we try to not encourage state complaints, but sometimes it happens. And so when it does, we will help parents work through the process of how do you write a good state complaint and give the facts and how you get the details and that kind of thing. Another thing, if you do add yourself to our newsletter list, we are one of the first groups to get state and federal guidance on anything related to disabilities with education. And sometimes if you look at like a Office of Special Education memo, you'll see we're copied on the bottom of it and CC'd by the federal government. So when we get those, we blast them out to people on our email list. So it's a good way to stay on top of it, like when the dyslexia law was passed, anything to do with the individual education accounts that's kind of new, we blast that stuff out because it keeps changing and evolving. So that is a lot of information about what we do, kind of as an overview. So another thing we do, what we call hot topics, parent involvement. We're always pushing parent involvement. The state has just gone through the process of re-evaluating the eligibility criteria for disabilities regarding IDEA. They didn't have a whole lot of parent participation. We were on it. So we pushed through to make them do more parent involvement, more questions to parents to get feedback. So we are constantly looking to make sure that parents are at peace. So IEPs, like I said, I do a lot of talk about eligibility with parents, the process of evaluation, re-evaluation. Not too long ago, I talked to a family that their son has a hearing issue. He's doing a lot better in school because of his IEP and accommodations, and because he's doing well in school, the school said he no longer needs an IEP. So I said, well, I can't just do that. They have to reevaluate him to see if he meets the criteria to have one, the eligibility process. And so that fixed it for her. So that's all it took was sending in, and I'm not a big law quoter. I'm not like, here, you need to just tell them it's in section 300 point whatever. I will send them that, and I will say, if you have to do it, use this. But hopefully you can say to them, I've read it, I know what it says, and this is what you are supposed to do. So I try to get them to work with the school that way. And I just always hope that it's just that they're misguided and just made a mistake, and the school says, oh, okay, well, we'll fix it. So that's my hope. So we do manifestation determination. We help families kind of through that process when a child, they're trying to understand a behavior, and if the child's going to be kicked out of school or placement change, and all the rules regarding suspension, because a lot of them have questions, even now, it's the beginning of school, and some kids have already been suspended for a day or two, and the parents, can they do that when my child has disabilities? Well, yeah, they can. And so you explain to them that process and what it is and what to watch for if it continues and what to ask for. So then I ask them the background. I always ask them, well, what happened? Tell me what occurred. What has happened in the past? Is this new? Is this a behavior that's been happening? And then how to kind of work through, is it time to do a behavior assessment if not one's not been done? And you probably wouldn't be surprised, because a lot of schools, these kids have these behaviors and they've not done an assessment. So it's amazing that they don't. So then right now we're talking to a lot of parents about individual education accounts, which is brand new to the state. I don't know how many people, raise your hands, have heard of the individual education account. Okay, so what that is, our state lawmakers passed a law that says if you have these certain disabilities, it's not all of them, it's the expensive ones. It's like autism, some orthopedic, all those, there's a handful of them. If you have one of these disabilities, you've been a student in a public school system for 2 semesters in a row, or are newly entering, so if you haven't been in kindergarten, you're enrolling now, then you can apply for an individualized education account, which basically means you are taking yourself out of IDEA. You're going to say no to anything in IDEA, you will get nothing. It's like you don't exist to the public school system at all. And you will get the BEP funding for that system. So right out about $6,500 minus a 4% fee that the state charges to administer it. And so then you get it every quarter. It's supposed to pay for all schooling, all related services the child might need, all therapies and aid, whatever the child needs, that's it. That's all you get. And so you can re-enter the school system, but they're still working through all the various rules, and they're just now taking applications for January 2017. So it passed. It's been about over a year ago, and so it's just now to the phase of implementation. So, okay, so when they go, they have to, it's like being homeschooled. They can be homeschooled. They can go to a qualifying private school, whatever, but at that point they have to take the TN Ready tests. So if, say, the child had an intellectual disability that qualified him to take the alternative test, they have to take the TN Ready, and they have to take that type of test because they have to know where they're at. It's a parental choice of education. If you feel like you're not getting what you want, you decide you want to homeschool, then why not get the BEP funds, I guess. So it's all parental choice. It's not enough. We did a little analysis of what things cost. I mean, unless you've got great health insurance paying for all your therapies and all that, there's no way you can touch it from a cost standpoint. So it just depends what you want. So that's why we're getting a lot of questions about it. The parents are asking kind of out their questions, which they really have to send to the state, because the state's the only one that can answer those. But they've got a great, state website's hard to navigate a little bit, but if you actually put in individual education account, Tennessee, it will pop up and it takes you right to their page. It has a question answer sheet. It's got all this kind of stuff out there, so because they're really publicizing it right now. So response to instruction and intervention, RTI, it's getting better. We used to get a lot of questions about RTI because that's a general education program, and some schools would implement it like it's special education. They can utilize the programs within it, but they can't hold special education children to the same time criteria and all that other stuff that's bound in a general education program. So trying to get that information out to schools, we work on that, and parents. So we try to work with parents on how to get the schools to understand it. We actually have so for students in juvenile facilities, we've got he was our coordinator in Memphis, but he took a job in D.C., but he works for us on contract, and he helps us with juvenile justice issues, so anything dealing with the juvenile system. So then, like I said, we push out Tennessee Department of Education information. We're typically one of the first groups to get it. We send it out to all the families and any information by districts or other organizations that want us to speak or have questions. So really quick, the objectives I thought y'all would want to know about is we'll talk really quick about the 4 parts of IDEA. We're going to define a child with a disability, 6 principles of IDEA, and how can you get information. And I love that baby. He's on everything, but I think he's so darn cute. I can't stand it. So I had to put him on this when I found that. I was like, that's perfect. Okay, so here's the act really quick. This is the main focus of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education. And that's the key words, free, appropriate public education, that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for a future education, employment, and independent living. And so wherever we get something, we're going to tell you where it's found. And so under the regulations, you can see that's 300.1. So that's the first statement in the regulations. So they're all numbered in numeric order. So in 1997, they amended IDEA and they made the 4 parts. So Part A just says general provisions. Part B is what we're really talking about here, is when kids are 3 to really pretty much 22. They can either general education diploma or 22. Then C, which is the babies, that's TEIS territory right there. And then D. So this is where we're funded, different aspects of the funding piece come into play for the school systems. So a child with a disability, so these are all the disabilities in the state of Tennessee. I really should just get this to pop up. Oops. So you'll see there's a couple of asterisks, and those are Tennessee-specific categories. So that is why everybody's like, why is there one in every state? Because every state says, hey, we're going to adopt IDEA. Of course, it's federal law, right? And then they say, and we're going to do plus this. So there is a plus this to IDEA that's Tennessee-specific. And so those, like developmental delay, functional delay, and intellectually gifted, are Tennessee-specific categories. And so they have different rules, and them, I'm sure they are going through all that in that eligibility review. So these are the things that they are reviewing right now, is all these categories and what comprises autism. Yes? What? So it's not, so they put it under a category to give intellectually gifted children more advanced stuff. But it says if they have a behavior problem, there is no manifestation determination for them. They don't get the same things like a child with a disability. So there's kind of exemption on it, that they will not be treated like it's a disability. And we've actually had in Nashville, we had a case where there was a family who the child was intellectually gifted, classified as that, got into some behavior issues and stuff. There's nothing you can do. They're not protected by IDEA. They're not, because it's on there that they're out. It's not a disability. So, well, it's right, because they're not getting, they say this is disability, but it really is, the children have these diagnoses, and then to get their education, they need supports and services. And so it's that same thought process, that for an intellectually gifted child to get the support they need, they have an IEP that has additional educational support on it. Right, it is adverse. If a child is doing math on an 8th grade level, but they're in a 4th grade class, it's an adverse impact. Exactly. So, the funding piece, I'm not sure how the state, because it's a state category, so I'm not sure how the state funds the gifted piece. So as long as you're doing, well, yes, but the whole, right, well, yeah, the whole point is if you read IDEA and all that, is to try for kids to go to their potential, whatever that is. So, and that's when actually the state, it was 2 years ago, changed IEPs to what they call structurally appropriate IEPs, where if you were in 4th grade, but you can only read on like a kindergarten level, they used to write your IEP. He will read at a 4th grade level. Really? He reads kindergarten. So they changed into instructionally appropriate where, okay, he reads kindergarten level, our goal is going to be maybe 1st grade. So where it made sense for children to try to achieve their highest level that they can achieve. So it's kind of that. I know gifted, honestly, it's a hornet's nest. It's been a topic of discussion, and you've got an advocacy group of gifted families that fight to keep it as a category, but we're one of very few states that have a gifted category. So it's, yeah. But it's, as far as I saw in the eligibility revamp, it's still there. So they still won their battle again. They're still in. But like I said, if a gifted child did something that was looking at, they were going to get an alternative school behaviorally, they don't get any protection from IDEA. So the 6 principles of IDEA, free appropriate public education, FAPE, and I tell people all the time, if it doesn't have an acronym, it is not in special education. That is the rule. It has to be able to have an acronym, or we're not taking it. So we've got FAPE, and then appropriate evaluation, an IEP, individual education program, at least restrictive environment, an LRE, parent participation in decision-making process, and procedural safeguards. So that's what we call the 6 principles. So FAPE, free appropriate public education, means special education and related services are provided at public expense, under public supervision, and at no cost to parents. So we tell parents all the time, because it is an entitlement program, but we tell them if your child is required to pay, if every kid pays a paper fee, you pay a paper fee. If the 8th grade class has taken the ACT Explorer to see what they're going to do with their lives, there's no consent because they're all taking it. So it's different. But when they single your child out, that's what we try to explain to them. When they single your child out for an evaluation, like a behavior assessment or something, you have to sign consent. So we use those examples to help parents understand it. So this is our flow chart so people can kind of visualize how the process works through their child find referral screening, and then the written referral request can happen, and then informed consent, which is where the parent has to sign the consent for the testing, and then you do the evaluations and assessment, and then there's, if the child's eligible, there's a meeting, and then the IEP development. And the law says you can have the eligibility meeting, then the IEP meeting, 30 days, up to 30 days later, but a lot of times schools will do them all in one for a very long meeting right there. But they do it, and they can. Absolutely. Yep. By law, they can, we tell them in writing, request an evaluation. A school can always decline to do the evaluation. Odds are really good, though, if you took it to the state would say just do the evaluation. But and we try to, that's the thing we got to make clear to parents too, is when we write a letter requesting our child be evaluated, that is not informed consent. There is a consent form. And so I tell parents, on there, put a deadline. I want to hear back from you to sign consent within 5 days or by Friday or whatever that is. And if you don't hear from them, you escalate it up the chain. So in writing, always in writing, keep a copy. And I tell them, if you take anything to the school that's in writing, like your IEP meeting notice or whatever it is, have whoever you hand it to sign it like you delivered a UPS package. Received by so-and-so on this date. And then just you keep a copy of that, just like the UPS man who comes in. They're not agreeing to anything, but they're signed and received. So eligibility, and this is also another thing that's kind of hard sometimes for parents to understand, because they may get a diagnosis from like a Cherokee Health or something, and they think they can, first of all, just take that evaluation to the school, and the school is bound to use it. They don't have to use it, and most don't. They'll do their own, and we tell parents what to do, as a backup that they can at that time. If they don't agree with the school, request an independent evaluation at that time. But parents, that confuses them. But I always think it's great to have a private evaluation, because you really, honestly, you get so much more information and assistance that way. It really helps. And it also helps to guide the school in doing the evaluation to get the right, like I would have never guessed autism for my daughter. I just would not have been a guess at all. And so had I not had the private evaluation, I wouldn't have known that. But it is, for eligibility for IDEA, it is a two-pronged test, like he said. You have to show the educational impact of the disability. So you can have a child that has a disability with no educational impact. They don't qualify, but they probably at that time would get a 504 maybe, which is a discrimination, to protect them from discrimination in the classroom or something due to their disability. But so you have to meet the two-pronged test. And I like to use my daughter as a good example, because educationally, there's nothing she needs. She reads above grade level. She does math above grade level. She aces what was TCAPS, T and Ready tests. She doesn't need any of that. But she cannot focus in the classroom. Teachers get mad because looks like she's not paying attention, because she's working on other stuff while she's absorbing what they're saying. She needs accommodations to survive a general education classroom successfully. She needs to be allowed to get up occasionally. I mean, if she's feeling angst up, But can she be in a general education? Absolutely she can. And she can do the work. But when she was little, you couldn't get her to do like 20 math problems. She'd like, why do I have to do 20? I know it. So, okay, show us 10, and then you're free to go. So those type of accommodations is what kids need. And so I tell parents, it's not always ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's what the child needs to be successful in a classroom. So because of her high functioning, she is actually a really good example. So I tell parents too, because they're really confused about what's going to be evaluated. Let's see what time it is. And I always tell them to be sure to look at the eligibility criteria that's in the state law. And that way they know who is supposed to be doing the testing, who's involved, what the testing's going to look like, and they can make sure the school is doing it that way to come up with a proper diagnosis. So it's actually this is our parent manual, Blue Book. And so it's actually on the front of our website. You can actually see the whole million pages of it. It's a little blue icon, and we've done this we've been open for 25 years, and I think so everybody knows it as the Blue Book, and it has IDEA in it, has the whole law, it has the Tennessee regulations, which of course start with the orange page. Why wouldn't they, right? And it has 504, it has all the laws in it, and I tell parents it's a great tool. But when I got one, I never looked at it, because if I had a question, I called me. I called the person who was me, right, at the office and said, I'm confused about this. Tell me. Because I answer transportation questions all day long, and they're in funky places in the Tennessee law. It's actually under least restrictive environment, which as a parent, I would not think to look there. But I know that, right? So call me. That's what I tell them. You don't have to know this. But you can always, it's a PDF form, so if you want to look up something, you can always PDF and search and find stuff in the Blue Book. So it's a handy tool, and it has a lot of contacts on the back. And it also has letters, example letters people can write for eligibility requests or reevaluation or whatever. So that's in there. So it's a good resource for people. But I always bring it to show people because it's thick. It's not a little book. So appropriate evaluation, which is really important, is to make sure it's happening at a time that will be successful for the child. I talked to one parent, and their child really has afternoon issues. So when do you think they did the speech evaluation? What time do you think? 1 o'clock, yeah, then it wasn't successful. I wonder why. And they knew this about the child because he has behavior issues after lunch. So, so talking her through that and getting her to talk to the school to get it done again and at the proper time early in the morning when it'll be successful for him. And it has to also be in their native language, non-discriminatory. So the timeline's important. Tennessee used to be 45 school days. They switched, it's been a year and a half or so, to 60 calendar days, which matches the federal law, IDEA. But it's calendar days. And a lot of schools don't want to evaluate over the summer. Sorry, it is calendar days. So if I sign consent in May, it will be done over the summer. So it is calendar days. Every day counts, even Christmas break, everything. Then they have 30 calendar days to develop the IEP and put it into place. So like I said, sometimes they do that at the same meeting, sometimes they don't. So evaluations do require parental consent, including the reevaluation that is every 3 years, unless everybody says we're not going to, we agree not to do one, it's not necessary. Parents can also request one in a year. Evaluation results that are used for the IEP for the child. So that's the evaluation. Reevaluations, like I said, at least once every 3 years. Parents can deny a reevaluation request. So the schools can't, need to give you a good cause if they want to do one at off time. Parents can also request an evaluation. When my daughter was in 8th grade, she's heading, of course, into high school, her reevaluation wasn't up until like the end of her freshman year. But, it'd been 3 years, and middle school, it's crazy for typical kids, they change a lot. And so I said, let's do this before she heads into high school. So at the beginning, they agreed. So at the beginning of 8th grade, we started to do her reevaluation just to see where she's at, because she's such a high-functioning student, to kind of understand where her bases are. And then they can, be used to change a child's placement or services, like the example of the child with the hearing loss. So the IEP it's a written statement for the child with the disabilities developed, reviewed, and revised. There are regulations, and this is what I tell parents. It's really important. There's a process to the IEP. If you actually look at an easy IEP, which is kind of an ironic name, I'm just going to say the company that named it was fooling everybody, I guess. It's not easy, but if you look at them enough, like I do, they're like etched in my memory, but they flow. They make sense if you think about it, because on the front page they have the child's information, the disability, any kind of medical information. And I do tell parents that's their choice whether that medical information goes on there. But I said if they have a seizure protocol or something like that, you probably would want it on there, but they don't have to list all the medications. That's totally up to the parents. The second page, it's about the child. What does the child like? What difficulties do they have? Kind of like that. And you get into the present levels of performance, which is the whole basis of an IEP, is the present levels of performance. And so I tell parents that's so critical to make sure that stuff is well written, and it's not just data numbers, that it contains, Johnny reads on a first grade level, because that makes sense to everybody. Not that his star points are X, Y, Z. None of us understand that. And so it does say under there it should be descriptive. And so to hold the school accountable for it being descriptive, because a lot of times it is not. But the team should be basing their decisions on that data. And then it gets to the point of, do they have any communication problems? Do they need assistive technology? Do they have behaviors? Then we start going into, okay, so let's look at accommodations, kind of where we're going to start learning all this stuff and what we need. So it does make sense. And that's why I tell parents, if you walk in and they've already decided placement that your child's going to be in a comprehensive development classroom, or CDC, as we like to call it, because like I said, everything has, an acronym, then it shouldn't be predetermined. It may be necessary, or a blended, class schedule, but you've got to walk through all the IEP, because it does flow in actual order. So that's what we do, help parents kind of understand that. So then we talk about establishing the present levels of performance and measurable annual goals, which is the format the state did change a year and a half, and we are still working with schools to write good measurable annual goals. And there is actually, we have a whole workshop, and it is on our YouTube, on how to write. They have a little template thing. It's color-coded. use like child's name, this and that, and it gives you the colors, and so you can actually walk through the process and practice writing measurable annual goals in the correct format. So it takes a minute to get used to it, but it does work very well. And then to state special education related services and supplementary aids. And I spent a lot of time talking about related services to parents too, because they may have questions saying, my child is supposed to have an aid. And so we'll talk about looking at the IEP. Well, what does the IEP say? And a lot of times it won't say that. They say, well, they said it, in the meeting. I'm like, there's a difference between saying it and it's in the meeting notes as a yes, and it's on the IEP as a yes. So, what do your meeting notes say, and what does the IEP say? And so it's that education piece of parents of trying to get them to understand you got to go from the meeting, make sure the meeting notes are accurate with yes/no statements, and that ends up on the IEP, and then that's the legally binding document. Treat it like a business, people. It's a business. It's your part-time job. Trust me, it is a part-time job, parents. So special education, it's specially designed instruction, because even, I'm going to say, I just read an evaluation from Vanderbilt, and they actually used the word special education as a place. It's not. It's specially designed instruction. So it is not a place, and so we try to make parents understand that it is what your child needs. Like my child needs specially designed instruction to be successful in a general education classroom with their peers. So instruction can occur, like we tell parents, general education classroom, resource room, separate class, day school, hospital, homebound. We also talk to a lot of parents about homebound and the process of homebound, and it's actually a Tennessee law. So if their child needs that, we work with them on that process. So related services, which is, I'm sure, what you guys are pretty familiar with, related services with the schools. So it can be anything from transportation, and we've been dealing actually with back to school, a lot of transportation issues. I've been working with parents. And that could even be sometimes, if the school can't figure it out, paying a parent to transport the child. So we've worked with parents on that. And it's developmental, corrective, or supportive services that enable the child to get free appropriate public education. So my child receives occupational therapy services, has for eons, because she just can't write. She struggles with fine motor skills, and so she still receives them. They're still working on it a lot, but she also uses technology. She uses an iPad, which she has since middle school, to kind of get past that. So she works with her therapist on the iPad, and which has been great for me because I don't have to deal with it. So I like the therapist very much. And that's why I talk to parents. It's really great, especially if it's the school's therapist, to have that relationship where they're very supportive of working with you and you're working with them, and they can be a huge advocate for you in a meeting. Whoops. So this is just a list of related services, and it's not exhaustive. It's just out of IDEA. And even parents, so if a parent needs to learn sign language because the school is teaching their child sign language, that can be a provided service by the school, because the key is to express that there needs to be consistency at home and at school. So if the school is using, picture cards, the same picture cards should be at home, so that there's no confusion. And then that it really, like I tell parents, is so important for that communication to be open about what the school is utilizing for communication, so that you are doing the same. And as children get older and they're transitioning out, they do a lot of work study out in the community. So they'll go to restaurants. And so how does the school have your child order when they're in a restaurant? Are they pointing to the menu? Are they writing it down? What is the process? So that when you take your child out, because it's a bad habit, parents, we're all guilty, you order for them. It's easier. Just get it over with. Let's just do this. And so let's, utilize what the school is doing to keep pushing the child to do it for themselves, because we're not always going to be here. So I have really bad habits with my daughter, doing stuff for her just because it's easier. And I think we all do that, even with just typical kids. It's just easier. Let's just get it over with. So least restrictive environment, We work a lot with parents talking about LRE, special classes, separate schooling. Removal of the child from regular education environment occurs only if the nature and severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplemental aids and services cannot be achieved. And that's the important part, is asking, what we tell parents to do is to dissect the day. When a school says that their child needs to be in a comprehensive development classroom and the parent doesn't want that or doesn't agree that that's a full-time placement, and maybe the child's behaviors or whatever because they're frustrated in that singular classroom, to dissect a general education day and say when, if it's like kindergarten, we do cubbies now, and then we go to circle time, and then we do what supports would the child need to do these things, so is it possible with support? And so it's agonizing, I'm not going to lie, to go through a general education day, but it also is a good lesson for the schools to think about what they have available to that child that could actually provide in a general education setting for the child. PE, everything. Walk through it all, what the child needs to be with their typical peers. And you'll be amazed at how much general education time you can carve out by forcing that process. So we even have like a little just template form, but a lot of schools will pop out like an Excel spreadsheet and go through the day and write what supports. And we tell them when you decide a support is needing, who is it going to be and who's their backup? And then what happens when they're on field trips? Keep going, go that far. And if they're a chess club, what happens then? That whole process, just keep moving the whole day. So a public agency must ensure that a child will attend the school he or she would attend if non-disabled unless the IEP requires otherwise. So in other words, they're zoned school so that they're with their peers after school. I see a lot, there's a county not to be named around where I live, and it's not Knox, I will tell you that has a tendency to place children who need any kind of CDC at all in this one elementary school that has a CDC program instead of looking at what supports could be provided, and it's elementary kids, and that's important for them to be with their peers. What could they do in that small elementary school maybe that isn't needing CDC? So they don't even look at that first. They say, oh, they have an IEP, they're going to be at this elementary school. So it's that process. So we've had to work with the families to try to get that process worked through. And so then, like I said, that they're not removed from regular education solely because they need some modifications to the curriculum. So parent participation is and I tell parents this, it is a huge part of IDEA. Schools who have meetings without parents, they have to go through heaven and earth to do that because it's like, have you notify them, have you do this, do that, do that. You have to all this, there's a huge process written out in IDEA about how you have to try to contact the parents and get parent involvement. And so I'm not saying schools don't just do it, but they're supposed to. And so I tell parents, you're an important part of the team. When it comes to the actual IEP team that meets, the two top players, because there's 4 required, the 2 top player is the parent and what's called the LEA representative, the local education agency rep. And I always tell them to find out who that is because it could be anybody in that meeting. And then you have the special education teacher of the child and general education teacher of the child. That's the 4 required people. And the top 2, the only 2 that can release someone to leave the meeting are the LEA rep and the parent. That's what it says. So I tell parents, you are critical, you're important. So, I always tell them to keep that in mind because they go into this meeting and they're sitting there and there's 8 school people sitting in there. And I'm like, it gets worse when they go to middle school, even more. And it's just more and more. And so to remember that you are an important person at this meeting. So for more information, so like I said, this, my face, and we're on YouTube. You can also see my director, she's on it, and some other people. So we have workshops also in DVD for people who do not have internet access. When I'm talking to a family, I ask them that question. Do you email? And if I email you something and it's a Word document, can you edit it and print it? So if you can't, I can mail you things. And then I can pre-edit stuff too. And we also do, all that YouTube stuff is on DVD. We try to keep it pretty current. There's our step manual that you can, that's the little picture actually that's on the internet. We have an events calendar that'll have actually our stuff and other agencies' events going on. And then we do Facebook. So if we're out volunteering or at something, we'll try to remember to send in a photo of where we're at. So my daughter, like I said, I get her to volunteer. We actually volunteered at, I was out at Cherokee Dam. It was a big event. And so she loves it because she gets to work with the kids. And then I talk to the adults because it's all for people with disabilities. And so it's really good because we divide and conquer. So I took a picture of her at the table. So she let me take one picture. And then I wanted to take another one. She goes, no. Like she made this funny face like, you got one, you're done. No more. So this is us right now. We are trying to hire our Middle Tennessee coordinator, and which we've got somebody. We think we're going to just actually Patricia, who's the specialist for multicultural community engagement. She is going to move into the Middle Tennessee coordinator position because she's really doing it now as we speak, and then West Tennessee. So, which is it's not a good time to be without it because it is back to school. So it's been a little bit busy. We're hoping it dies down. So you can always call our 800 number. Anybody can, and we will route that person to the right person to talk to. And that's pretty much who we are. I just wanted you guys to have a little background about IDEA in case you were unfamiliar and the kind of type of questions that we typically get. A lot of eligibility questions I get because a lot of times the school, they'll communicate with the school like I did, and nothing will be happening to try to work with the child. Well, it is the thing is the school can't use a lack of resources as an excuse. Well, yeah. If they actually say the words, we try to get the parents to have them write it down on a prior written notice form. But, I think the key is to try to walk through the school to try to figure out what resources they do have available that would work. Like I was working with a parent today, actually, we talked, and it's a child with dyslexia and stuff, and they're trying to keep him from going on a field trip because of AR points and all this stuff, because he reads slower and all this. So we talked about that, but she said, I'm willing to work on AR points at home and during breaks and all that with him, so he won't fall behind his peers, so keep up with them. It just takes him longer. And so she actually went out and found, where the website is and how she can log in, and that they're willing to let her log in. So she compromised with the school. I know that you can't do it all in a school day. He needs more time, but let's, keep him with his peers, but let's just do it. He'll just do a little extra on the weekends. And so it's kind of working with parents trying to figure out what they could do, potentially working with the school. It is hard, in the rural county. But some of the rural counties do amazingly well. But you can have a school system like my daughter goes to Greenville, and her IEP is great, and she's always got what she needs. And I'll work with other families that I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is an IEP from the same school district. Same people, because it's small. It's all squeaky wheel. It's all how the parent advocates. It's all how the parent presents facts. It's, like I said, it's that business aspect of, showing the need and researching kind of what's out there. And that's what, when my daughter got the iPad in, I think it was in the 6th grade, was I presented the facts about why it was needed in a letter to the school. Why it was needed. I had support from the occupational therapist, what was going on. We walked into the IEP meeting, and all we talked about was what apps we were going to use on it because it was already pre-approved. And so parents sometimes are scared to let the school know in advance what they want to talk about, like they think the surprise is not a great way to go. It's, you want the school to look and say, hey, this is what they need. These are the facts. What resources do we have that we could do this with? So it's so much better that way if it's not, us against them. So that's what we try to do, is give parents that kind of strategy. And, they can tell me what it is they want, and then I'll work with them to give them some ideas. And then what I usually do, because on the phone they're kind of amped up talking to me, it's like a bartender. They like throw up all the information on me, and then I kind of start telling them reasonable stuff. And they'll forget, so I always send them like an email saying, we talked about this, and this is what you need to do, and here's some attachments for you to read, and some links for you to go to. And so then that way it's all reiterated to them in the email. So that's typically how I function with them, because it helps. Whichever. So TN Voices actually, we do some referral to them, and they some referral to us. If a child has a really serious, the medical issue going on, we would probably refer them to Tennessee Voices, just because they will go to meetings more than we do, and that's because that's the way they're funded like that. So it just depends on what's going on. If it's a simple strategy, we'll just help them. But if it's something really in-depth with an ongoing medical thing, we for sure will send them to. Right. And in some states, the PTI and TN Voices are one. And, I can't say that won't happen here. It could in the future. I don't know. It just depends on how the grants are written and what happens. So. Uh-huh. Okay. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 Because they're not forced to tell about us. If you look in the back of your rights book that they shove down your throat every time you go to an IEP meeting that you have to have, we're in the back as a resource. So if you look in the back, the state has listed us as a resource, which used to not be that way. But we've got a really great relationship with the state now that we've had for several years. We had a director before that was really controversial with the state. It's changed. So we have this director now that says, we don't agree with everything you do, and we want you to make sure you represent parents. So we're not like yes men, but we want to work with you because we know by working with you, the message is better for all. And so that's her thought process. So, yes, all the time. So it just depends. I don't know who every principal of every school is. So if your special education director of your school system doesn't disseminate the information about a workshop that's in your area or whatever, then that's how it's not getting there. Or if that, right. So it's up to really, like we were talking earlier, the administration of a school makes a huge difference in what happens, especially with kids with disabilities. Huge. So it's just, like I said, I live in Greenville. Greenville City School Systems, people call me on stuff because they know that if I send something to the special education director for Greenville, we even hosted free a high school transition training for teachers, like how to write IEP transitions, tools to use for planning, all that. Nobody from Greenville came because he doesn't support sending that stuff out. Isn't that horrible? It was right in the middle of Greenville City. So it's all in if they disseminate the information and send it out, because we send it out to special education directors, and it's... No, it's going to be the director of special education for your school. Yep. Nope, for Knox County, the school system. Yeah. They can call it that, but it's not a place. Special education is not a place. It's... Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the you can actually, in IDEA, it talks about it being specially designed instruction. They don't it doesn't call it special education. When it says special education, it means that it's specially designed instruction. So, yeah. Like I said, even Vanderbilt did it. I was dying. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they did that. But I know, it's just like, yeah. But no, the more, and that's why I'm here doing this, is we just try to get the word out to, we actually, Caleb and I were talking earlier about a small county. It's like, I'm trying to get into that county. How do I do that? Because some of the rural counties is very cliquish and, and, you're a stranger here. The first time I went to Hancock County, I was meeting with a family at the Hardys. I walked in that Hardys, and thought an alien with a green head walked in, because they're like, well, she ain't from around here. We don't know her. It was the breakfast boys, sitting at their table, looking me over. So, yeah. So there was a school, there's an elementary school, I forgot the name of it now because it was end of last year. No, it was, but they had us come in to talk to all their parents and do all that. We did a Spanish session, and we were doing IEP meetings and all. So that elementary school was doing all that, and they're in Knox County. Yeah, if you want, we can do a parent training, because they have to do parent training stuff. We can do parent training stuff for them. We could do a basic rights workshop, and our basic rights, like what you just saw, that's a lot of it, that's some of it. It's harmless. It's not, it's communicate with the school. These are who's at the meeting. You're supposed to get a meeting notice. It's all just basics. It's not anything critical. So, no. And like parents will call me and they're like really adversarial. I'm like, oh, if you use that tone with the school, you are not going to get anywhere. I hate to tell you that. So you're going to have to take it down a notch, a little bit. So we talk about how to, like I said, excuse yourself if you're feeling a little bit crazy, amped up, walk out for a minute, take a break, how to kind of work through it, how to have a list of your top 3-4 things, kind of keep yourself on track. I tell parents to write the who, what, when, why, how, where questions at the top, because those are really good questions to ask the school. How are you going to provide it? Where is it going to happen? When will, those type of things. So just things to keep them focused so that they don't get all emotional, because it is emotional. So, and that's, we do that. We actually bring chocolate, write thank you letters. Yeah, I send thank you emails, for people all the time. Even a teacher who, like my daughter's band teacher, works great with her, amazing. I actually will send her a note and like copy the principal of the school, so he knows what a great job she's doing. So, any other questions? Yeah, we are like the best kept secret, but there's only like 8 of us. So if you tell everybody, we could never get all our work done. So, no, I'm just kidding. No, we try to get the message out, but it's just one of those things. They're not required by law to tell anybody. So, yep. But Knox County is the machine. We'll help give you strategies on how to get the transportation needs situated. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, call me. Call me. I can help you. All right. Is that it? So I just tell them. Oh. Every state, it's called something different in every state. So if you put Parent Training and Information Center, you'll pull up, there's a national organization that you pull up the state and you can figure out what, because just like anything, we're the state, and we belong to a region, and we belong to a national group, it's that process. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks.